just get started, go out, find a community space, find a forum, find somewhere that makes sense for you, join, listen, figure out what help means to that community and where that intersects with how you can support, and then get chatting. And when you get chatting, don't show up as the brand, show up as the person behind the brand, show up as you. I'm Erin Simmons, and this is SEO in 2026.
Erin, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
So in 2026, we're starting already to see AI is where people start their research, and community is where people are making up their minds. So in 2026, the smartest SEO strategies are going to optimize for both.
So I guess starting off with where people conduct their research, would you say it's the norm for many people, many industries to be using AI? Because it feels like as SEOs, we're probably more aware of using AI and interacting with AI than perhaps the average person out there. Would you say the average person still uses Google and perhaps might gravitate to AI mode? I mean, do we have to think of conventional search more than AI, or is AI really where a lot of people start off their research nowadays?
Yeah, I think that people are getting AI more in their face through like AIO. But to your point, I don't think that the average person is going to ChatGPT or Perplexity specifically. You know, if your demographic is maybe in like my mother's demographic, I definitely know she's not going to ChatGPT, but she does use Google a lot. So she is experiencing AI mode. So I think, it depends on your audience, absolutely. But also we are seeing AI answers thrust into search much more now. And I do think that that piece is going to kind of change the way that people are reacting to the search results that we're getting. And we're already seeing that in some of the studies that have been done on, how are people reacting to AIO in Google search.
And what's your mother's non-technical perspective on what AI mode offers her?
We don't talk about it.
Okay.
I think that if it's ever come up, it's almost been like, I don't know what this is. What is this? But actually, that's interesting. I should ask her, knowing that she uses Google a lot. Hey, have you seen these little things that pop up? What do you think about that? Do you like that? And those types of studies would be really interesting, right? Like not just, here's AIO with a bunch of users, but here's how people react to AIO from this age group. Here's how people react from AIO from all of these different intersections.
Exactly. I've certainly seen people with a non-technical background interacting with AI overviews, different AI search results within the conventional Google SERP. And AI mode is obviously significant steps beyond that, but it's where search is going. And if people are forced to be in that environment, then obviously they're going to interact with whatever happens to be in front of them. But always intriguing to get a non-technical perspective on how that interaction goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. We are, marketers, search marketers, and we're going to use these things differently, which I think is a real advantage because we're using them the way that I imagine the average user will start to use in, maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 3 years, something like that, right? So we are ahead of the game in that, but in 2026, how are we also managing for today's average user's current search experience and how they are actually searching, what they're actually reading, and the folks that aren't maybe going over to ChatGPT or Perplexity, but are experiencing things like AIO.
So you say that AI is where people start their research. So how does that differ to how people used to research perhaps 5 years ago in more conventional search engines? Are they using much longer phraseology, asking different types of questions? And do we have to optimize differently in order to appear in those results?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. My guess would be that, long tail queries as a non-SEO, I don't know if I'm using that phrase right, are becoming more and more common. But even if the search isn't changing, it's what we talked about earlier, where people are being presented with AI overviews and things like that. So AI is becoming almost like this new front door, and users are increasingly being met with AI overviews or maybe using ChatGPT, Perplexity. But what happens when they kind of read through that, let's say just AIO, read through that, their click, and whatever the second search is, that's where we're seeing a change. And I believe it was, is it Growth Memo? I'll have to get the exact brand that did the research, did this really interesting kind of user interface research on Google with AIO. They looked at it, where does a user click after leaving Google after their search with AIO and without AIO? Without AIO, they had like 18% of folks were going to like communities, videos, forums, and 57% were kind of just scrolling down and going to organic. With AIO, what we're seeing is this increase in community and video and forums. So instead of 18% of folks going there, we're now seeing 30% folks go there. And instead of 57% of folks going to organic, we're seeing 40% go. So there's something in there that tells me, and I think that this is kind of what wraps up my entire, like, you need to optimize for community, not optimizing for community, it's optimizing for trust. So there's something about an AIO result where people are like, I don't know that I'm trusting this as much. I need to go hear from someone I trust, and people trust people. So it's very hard for people to gain trust in a brand. And what we're seeing with whatever this kind of lack of trust or this dipping trust when an AIO shows up is that people are desiring to hear from the voices of other people versus even just these organic links below.
Well, you certainly know a lot of facts and figures about SEO for someone that claims not to be an SEO. I know you're managing director of a big SEO community, but talking about community, obviously you're saying that community is where people go to after doing that initial discovery type phrase. They look for that trust. They look for other people to be talking positively about their experiences in relation to a brand. So how do you know which community to that your audience is likely to interact on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that requires definitely some research. I do have a post on LinkedIn that's kind of, or an article on LinkedIn that's how do you get started even looking for community? And I think what it comes down to is it could be a very simple search. So think about your business and what you value. Let's say you value education, so educating the industry, and you value diversity and inclusion. So then you look at, okay, who's my audience? Technical SEOs. So your search query becomes something like your value, your audience, and community. So I'm looking for communities of tech SEOs for people of marginalized genders, or I'm looking for communities, tech SEOs who value education and help with like educational resources and training. So how are you taking both your values as a brand, as a human, and then your audience and having that intersection, and then going out and searching for, are there communities that exist at any of these intersections? And then it's a matter of maybe you join 1, 2 and kind of see, is this the right fit? Is this where I should be? Am I able to help in this community? So that's kind of one area. But then I think it really is just who's showing up in industry newsletters, who's showing up in your customers, like LinkedIn headers, right? A lot of people will put, a women in tech SEO community member right there in their LinkedIn profile. You could even, new customers signing up, where do you go to? Do you have communities in this industry that you follow? So I think it is just kind of sitting down, doing a bit of that research, thinking where are your values and your audience intersecting, and then going out and trying to find that niche that fits for you.
Great. Okay, so that's how you go about finding a community. And I was going to ask you about what you do actually after finding that community. But one phrase you used there was, how can I help in that community? So what does that help tend to look like? And I guess, how do you measure the impact of that help?
Yeah. So I think after you join a community, what you do is you just listen, right? Or read if it's going to be a digital community. and you start to understand, what does help look like in this community? Why do people come back to this community every day, once a week, once a month? What value are they getting out of it? Are they getting education? Are they getting access to opportunities? Are they getting some type of amplification of their voices that helps them excel in their career? Once you kind of figure out what are the different ways that people get value in this community, then you think to yourself, okay, how can is there anything here where I can show up with that value, right? So I think, thinking about Majestic, who is a Women in Tech SEO partner, Majestic has all of this wonderful content, right? So maybe it's educational, but more than that, I think it's what you and I are doing here today. One of Women in Tech SEO's, what we call collective career goals, is amplification. And David, I know that you invite so many folks from the Women in Tech SEO community to be on these podcasts and to be on these little videos. And then you're sharing those all over Majestic Social. You're using Majestic audience basically to uplift the voices of these people. So Majestic is not coming into our community to sell Majestic. Majestic is coming into our community and saying, where can we create value? And how do we do that within the realm of what already exists in the community? And by doing that, what you're getting is a lot of trust from these folks. So you're getting that showing up in a measurable way sometimes, and hopefully, I think this again is a great example, in mentions. So if you are doing social listening, or if you're looking through Reddit or trying to find like, where is this brand showing up and being tagged and being talked about? That's the outcome of the trust you build by going into a community and focusing on, okay, how can I really help here? Instead of maybe going in and focusing on, okay, how can I look at this community? I've given, 5,000 pounds to be a partner for a year, and I need to earn that back in ROI. It is a brand awareness play. And the way that it impacts the brand is by earning trust of these folks that you're helping. And in turn, if you don't expect anything back from that help, typically what I see happens is these folks see the value see the help and the support that you've given them, and they will call that out. So it goes back to something that I said the first time we talked, which is visibility is often a byproduct of trust.
So when you talk about the smartest SEO strategies, optimizing for both AI, where people start their research and community after that, is that part of the same campaign, the same content, or are you talking about two different threads here and having to have two different strategies to focus on one and the other?
That's a great question. I think, again, not being an SEO, but still people have let me work in this industry for over 10 years. I don't know why. But just being a marketer, I think integrated strategies are always going to be the best, right? So like your SEO and your community and your paid and your social, like all of those strategies really should come from some type of top level overarching theme. But when I think about SEO and say, maybe like community working together and to be able to optimize for AI, there is this whole stream I've seen of optimizing for AI. Maybe it's technically, right? The way you structure your content, what you're writing, all of those things. And also, there's this beautiful thing that happens if you are earning these trust mentions where AI is looking at LinkedIn. ChatGPT is pulling from LinkedIn. We know that Google has started to emphasize more Reddit results. These places where people are having person-to-person conversations, these places where trust is being exchanged, are often starting to be more prioritized in some of these AI tools, but also in search itself. So there is a beauty in, they're definitely not separate. And this, I hear so many people talking about the way to get into AI results is by doing brand work. This is brand work. So they do very much go hand in hand, but I do think there is this whole other stream that I don't know much about, which is actually optimizing maybe the way your content is written to get into AI. And I think probably both of those things need to be happening to make sure that you are kind of being everywhere search everywhere optimization, being everywhere you need to be, being in all of these places where ChatGPT, AI, Google search is pulling from. And there is this strength in, I think when it comes to trust, sorry if I'm getting a little outside your question, when it comes to trust people. A brand can tell me all day long why I should trust them. And maybe I will if it's like a low cost, low impact decision. But I would love for a brand to show me why I can trust them. And if I can't use the brand, right, I'm not going to maybe pay for Majestic out of the box because I just don't quite know. Do I need it? This is an investment in time and money, et cetera. But if I'm continually seeing Majestic show up and support my community, if I'm continuing to see Majestic share out all of these clips of all of these wonderful people that I know whose voices deserve to be heard and who are sharing these very valuable things back to the industry, that to me is starting, to like plant this seed of, okay, like these are some really kind people. And I don't see Majestic, right? I see the people behind Majestic. So I think there's something there as well, where it's like, we're showing up in these spaces and often thinking, okay, I need to get brand in these spaces. But really, you show up as yourself. You show up not as the brand, you show up as a person behind the brand. And that's where you have that person-to-person trust built. And you are kind of layering in then that brand as well, because we know like David and Majestic kind of go hand in hand.
Erin, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
So I think the key takeaway is just get started, go out, find a community space, find a forum, find somewhere that makes sense for you, join, listen, figure out what help means to that community and where that intersects with how you can support, and then get chatting. And when you get chatting, don't show up as the brand, show up as the person behind the brand, show up as you.
Erin Simmons is Managing Director at the Women in Tech SEO community. Find out more over at erinsimmonsfreelance.com. Erin, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thanks for having me, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at seoin2026.com.